The people of the book come home. The people of the book come home. We have any comments on that? Anything you want to mention?
I thought it was good. I liked it.
Yeah.
I did too.
And I've seen it many times, and it brings tears to my eyes each time.
I think it's a beginning of completion of the prophecy,
That's right.
where it says they'll be brought back to their homeland.
That's right.
And then after that, the next prophecy is they will convert to the Lord when Christ is coming.
That's right. So call to Him.
They'll call unto Him, and He will forgive them of all of their sins and transgressions.
Well, let's back up a little bit. We're in Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 25. Just a little quick review. We're talking about how Moses prophesied their dispersion. Deuteronomy 4:25. When thou shalt beget children and children's children, you shall have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves, and make a graven image or a likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke Him to anger. And so Israel's going to corrupt themselves and provoke God to anger. And this is what God's going to do in verse 26. I will call heaven and earth to witness against you this day that ye shall soon utterly perish off the land whereunto ye go over Jordan to possess it. You shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. And the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord shall lead you. And there shall you serve gods, the work of my hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. Let's talk about people leaving. It doesn't matter, we're talking about the Jewish people, but anytime people leave their homeland, what happens? What happens? If it's for a good thing or if it's a bad thing, what usually happens to those people?
They change.
They change. How so?
Yeah, they adapt wherever they're going. So
Right.
they may keep some of the stuff, but then they
Different
change
their
it.
language.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, we have prime examples of coming from Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
How many generations does it take to lose it?
Yeah. Yeah.
How many generations does it take to lose the language?
Yeah, my
Just
little
one
one
or
is
two,
just
just
fighting
one.
it. Yeah. It's
One
losing
generation.
that.
If they don't speak it in the home, it's gone.
Mhm.
Right. And so then a whole people group leave, and what happens to the language?
It disappears.
That becomes dead language, right? What happens to your customs? What happens to your customs?
They begin to disintegrate.
Right. I mean, the United States is a melting pot, and we're very proud of that. Nations from all the world, but ultimately it becomes watered down, and we become Americans, right? And that's who we are. But my past, I can't trace my past back to the customs, whatever we did 2 or 3 generations ago, Mom, right?
No, you can't.
Whatever we did as Norwegians or Italians, I don't know.
Less than what I do.
Norwegians.
Yeah, a little part Norwegian,
Part Italian.
part Italian, part German, part Welsh, part Irish, part English. I mean, the only Norwegian that we've held on to is Mercigu. He's come to the table. He's so good to come to the table. Y'all are?
That's why we remember.
Am I supposed to remember anything else? So, we're people group, most people group removed from homeland and have been watered down, and I don't know any of the traditions of the, grandparents or great-grandparents. And here we have the Jewish people. What happens to religion?
They stop.
I mean, you're gonna take on the religion of the people you're living around, right? I mean, that's what the Bible says here and there. You shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, the wood and stone. That's not their God. That's not Jehovah. We're going to take on the ones that they are surrounded with, aren't they? And so here we have any people group leaving their homeland. And here we have, how much of you forgetting?
Do you speak your language in your home?
Yes, you do. But you are first generation anyway. So
And the following generations, how are they doing?
they can speak, but
They can't speak
they
it?
can speak,
They can't speak it?
but not talk.
Right.
They don't choose.
So here we have right now, we have a prime example. What happens when you move yourself from your homeland? And here we have the Jewish people have not been home It's in 70 AD, 135 AD, right? And they were dispersed, they were scattered. And yet here we have this miracle where God has kept them together, scattered all over the world, but they've kept their Jewishness, right? They've kept their Jewishness. That can't happen, right? But God has kept it and has kept the desire in their heart to eventually return home. I don't have a desire to return to Norway or Germany or wherever we were, maybe to see some sort of gravestone of something, I don't know. But no, I don't know, it's not home, right? But here we have generations removed, have this desire now to return home. And it's just amazing. Just a miracle God, and that's that secular video I showed last week. Clearly you saw it was secular, and he's amazed about this. And their language, the Hebrew language, became dead. It's only spoken up in prayers and religious circles, not spoken on everyday streets. But here, God called a particular man to revive it and bring it up as a common language. Dead language. There has never been a dead language that has come back like that. And here we have Hebrew coming back, has come back, and it's part of a nation. And we see, particularly with the Jewish people, how when there's the Jewish people in a particular country, that country is blessed. You saw how many of the common companies, big companies we have today, who started them? A Jewish person. Many of the technologies we use today all come from a Jewish person.
Einstein.
Right? Super smart. And anything, fine arts and technology. And
many of the great artists of our day, Barbara Streisand.
Right.
She's Jewish.
And yet they are less than 1% of the world's population. And you saw the fact that 20% of all Nobel Prize winners are Jewish. That's amazing. We have a lot to be thankful for God's chosen people. We always look to the verse that out of you you'll be blessed, and we always point to because Christ came from them. Well, yes, that's the most important part, but look at how many other blessings they have provided the world through the gifts that God has given them. And yet they've been scattered all around the world. And now we see them coming back. Deuteronomy 4:29. Deuteronomy 4:29. But if from thence thou shalt seek the Lord thy God, thou shalt find him. If thou seek him with all thine heart, with all thy soul, when thou art in tribulation and all these things are come upon thee, even the latter days, if thou turn to the Lord thy God and shalt be obedient unto his voice, for the Lord thy God is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers, which he sware unto them. Through all the Holocausts, and we can point to several over generations, over the years. And we're familiar with the Holocaust with Hitler, but there's been many of those. We could go back in time. They wonder, where is God? And God has never left him. And God has not forgotten his covenant. And God is now bringing them back to the homeland. So number one, so we have C. Did we cover that part last week? C, hope of healing. Number one, healing will come when they seek God with all their heart and soul. They're not currently seeking God with all their heart and soul, but God has started that desire to bring them back to the homeland. Number two, this will occur during the Great Tribulation. Great Tribulation. I was reading some statistics. Most of the Ethiopian Jews have now returned back to Israel. Quite a bit of the Russian Jews, a lot of Argentina right now. France is a huge draw of Jews from France through all the terrorist attacks. The Jewish people are being drawn back to Israel from France. So we find here, number three, God will never forget his covenant. If God hasn't forgot his covenant with the Jewish people, with his chosen people, he's not going to forget his covenant with us, right? And number four, Israel will be restored. Israel will be restored. Deuteronomy 30, verse 1, and it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them in mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee, and shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thine heart, with all thy soul, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all nations, whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the uttermost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it, and he will do thee good, and multiply thee above thy fathers. Imagine this, Moses, they didn't even enter the promised land, and he's prophesying they'll be scattered for all the nations, and the nations in their perspective, I mean, what kind of global knowledge do they have versus what we have today? And here Moses is talking about the nations. They're going to be scattered in all the nations, and then he's going to fetch them from all the nations and bring them back and gather them. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand against again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Here's Isaiah prophesying. You've been outcast, we're going to pull you back in. The outcasts of Israel, we're going to bring you back from all four corners of the earth. Jeremiah 16:15. But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and all the lands whither he had driven them, and I will bring them again into the land that I gather unto their fathers. Jeremiah 23:3, and I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all countries, whither I have driven them, and will bring them again to their folds, and they shall be fruitful in increase. The nation of Israel is one of the most fruitful nations in the world.
I heard once that it's one of the 6 nations of the world that is autosufficient. They don't need anything from anyone. On the contrary, they give to other people.
Right. I read, was seeing yesterday that the most educated people in the world by country, how are they ranked? Israel ranked number 2. Canada ranked number 1, but Israel ranked number 2, and apparently it's based off of by density per capita. And Israel ranked number 2 as the most educated people in the world. The United States ranked number 4 in this particular ranking. And so they're blessed. Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 20, at that time will I bring you again, even in the time that I gather you, for I will make you a name and a praise among all people of the earth, when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith the Lord. I'm clearly not Jewish as far as I know. Mom, any knowledge of that? Imagine over the centuries.
Unless Dad's mother didn't tell us.
Yeah, I think we're finding out some pasts are kept a secret.
I don't know.
But imagine you over a Jewish person over the centuries, and everything they've had to go through, and they hold on to these verses. One day the Lord will fulfill his promise and bring our people back home. May this be the year. May this be the year. May we see you in Jerusalem. So we see God has already started bringing the people back. The word ayayah, A-L-I-Y-A-H, A-L-I-Y-A-H, is a Hebrew term for the immigration of Jews from the diaspora to the land of Israel. And so if somebody from the United States, God gives them the desire to return back to Israel, they're going on an ayayah. Ayah. They're returning back home. And does anybody want to know what that word means? It means ascent. Ascent. They're ascending. In other words, they're ascending to Jerusalem. They're ascending to Jerusalem. As Pastor has mentioned many, many times, when you ascend, that's what the word is. They're going to go to Jerusalem. They're ascending.
Yeah.
It also is defined as the act of going up. That is towards Jerusalem, making Ayah. By moving to the land of Israel is one of the most basic tenets of Zionism. The term comes from 2 Chronicles 36:23. Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia. Remember, the Babylonian Empire took them captive, and then the Persians took over. King Cyrus allowed a remnant to return. So thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God of heaven given me, and he hath charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you all? Who there among you of all his people? The Lord his God be with him, and let him go up. The last word of the verse in Hebrew is Ayah. Let him go up. Ayah. And so here's King Cyrus saying, let him ascend. Let him go to Jerusalem. All those who are Jewish, go home. Go home. Ayah. The opposite action, the immigration from the land of Israel. What do you think? I'll give you the Hebrew word, but what do you think the English word is for that?
Descent.
Descent. Descent. That's right. The immigration from the land of Israel is referred to in Hebrew as Yerida. Y-E-R-I-D-A. Y-E-R-I-D-A. Yerida. It means descent. Descent. So when you're leaving Israel, you're descending. The state of Israel's law of return. So when Israel became a nation, they formalized a law of return, which gives Jews and their descendants automatic rights regarding residency and Israeli citizenship. It accords any Jew and eligible non-Jews, and an eligible non-Jew is a child and a grandchild of a Jew, the spouse of a Jew, the spouse of a child of a Jew, and the spouse of a grandchild of a Jew. This is the legal right to assisted immigration and settlement in Israel, as well as Israeli citizenship. And I was researching, and there's quite a few organizations that will assist Jews to get home, to get back to Israel, to settle, give them a place to live, give them a job, give them language classes, get them set so that they are successful and prosperous in their new home. You know, there's several organizations that perform this idea. Let them return. Let them return. For much of Jewish history, most Jews have lived in the diaspora, where Ayah was developed as a national aspiration for the Jewish people. In other words, this is their desire, but God hadn't allowed it to happen yet. Only now, recently, has it happening. Although it was not usually fulfilled until the development of the Zionist movement in the late 19th century, the large-scale immigration of Jews to Palestine began in 1882. Since the establishment of the State of Israel in 1948, more than 3 million Jews have moved to Israel. More than 3 million Jews. So here's by year returning to Israel. And there are several graphics you can look online. It could correlate to major events. So in other words, the Holocaust pushed at the initial push here in 1948. This here is the Operation Solomon with the Ethiopian. They moved 14,000 Ethiopians in a 36-hour period. That's top secret mission. And so that's that number there. So these are returning. When the Iron Wall, right? The Iron Curtain, or the Iron Curtain fell. You have returning here of Russian Jews. As of 2014, Israel and Palestinian territories together contain 42.9% of the world's Jewish population. And so here we have Now we've succeeded the number of Jews in Israel outpaced north of the United States. And there's forecasts that the Jewish people will be leaving nations all over the world and continue to return back to Israel. God has put in their hearts that desire. And many of them were returning, many of the young people are returning without their parents. And they're going and joining the Israeli Defense Force. And so there's quite a few that are without their families and have that call to come home. So it just chills up my spine thinking about God's chosen people and how they're returning.
Everyone goes to the military, both men and women.
Yes,
They're obliged.
yes.
Go to the military.
Everybody has to serve at the age of 18 for 2 years. Well, Israel is commonly recognized as a country of immigrants. In other words, most everybody from Israel has come from somewhere else. Right. It is also, in large measure, a country of refugees. You saw last week in the video where the rabbi was interpreting that one particular scripture where the cloud and the dove, the cloud is being pushed into a refugee. They don't have a home to live in. They're being persecuted in their land, and they are pushed back to Israel. And you have others who, on their own free will, desire to go to Israel. So we have two different types of idea. Number 5, the command to know that the Lord alone is God. The command to know that the Lord alone is God. Verse 432, for ask now the days that are past, which were before thee, since the day that God created man upon the earth, and ask from the one side of heaven unto the other, whether there hath been any such thing as this great thing is, or hath been heard like it. Did ever people hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire, as thou hast heard and lived? Or hath God essayed to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation by temptations, by signs, and by wonders, and by war, and by mighty hand, and by outstretched arm, and by great terrors, according to all that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? Here we have Moses reminding them, has there ever been anything like this? Have you ever seen anything like this? Particularly when you've seen in your past, taking a nation out of another nation, taking the Israelites out of the nation of Egypt, seeing fire on the Mount Sinai, hear the voice of God. Did anybody ever hear this at all? Or has there anything ever been like this? Is there any greater thing than this that you've witnessed? Have you ever seen anything where a nation is taken out of another land by signs, by wonders, by mighty hand, by outstretched arm, the Red Sea, the plagues, the going through the wilderness, you name it. Can anybody testify to that happening to anybody else, any other nation? No. So number 1, has any other people heard God speak out of the fire and lived? I guess that was kind of rhetorical. Number 2, has God taken any other nation for himself and shown them signs and wonders and his mighty hand? Has he taken any other nations for himself? Deuteronomy 5:15, and remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out thence through a mighty hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commands thee to keep the Sabbath. Deuteronomy 7:19, the great temptations which thine eyes saw, and the signs and the wonders of the mighty hand, and the stretched out arm, whereby the Lord thy God brought thee out, so shall the Lord thy God do unto all the people of whom thou art afraid. Deuteronomy 11:2. And know ye this day, for I speak not with your children which have not known, and which have not seen the chastisement of the Lord your God, his greatness, his mighty hand, and his stretched out arm. Psalms 136, verses 11 through 26. and brought out Israel from among them, for his mercy endureth forever. With a strong hand, with an outstretched arm, for his mercy endureth forever. To him which divided the Red Sea into parts, for his mercy endureth forever. And made Israel to pass through the midst of it, for his mercy endureth forever. But overthrew Pharaoh and his host in the Red Sea, for his mercy endureth forever. To him which led his people through the wilderness, for his mercy endureth forever. To him which smote great kings, for his mercy endureth forever. And slew famous kings, for his mercy endureth forever. Zion, king of the Amorites, for his mercy endureth forever. And Og, king of Bashan, for his mercy endureth forever. And gave their land for an heritage, for his mercy endureth forever. Even an heritage unto Israel his servant, for his mercy endureth forever. Who remembered us in our low estate, for his mercy endureth forever. And hath redeemed us from our enemies, for his mercy endureth forever. Who giveth food to all flesh, for his mercy endureth forever. Oh, give thanks unto the God of heaven, for his mercy endureth forever. Has there ever been such a God like this? Have you ever seen this happen to any other people? Ezekiel 20, verse 33. As I live, saith the Lord God, surely with a mighty hand, with outstretched arm, and with fury poured out will I rule over you, and I will bring you out from the people, and will gather you out of the countries wherein you are scattered, and with a mighty hand, with a stretched out arm, and the fury poured out. We were there at the time when Mount Sinai occurred. We were there when the Red Sea. They're stories to us, right? They're stories. We go to Sunday school and hear the stories. But look at what we see today. We see it today. It's not a story. It's happening. We can witness it. You turn on the news, you see it. It's not a story. Has there been anything like this ever in history? No. Has there ever been a language revived from the dead after centuries, millenniums of being dormant? And now it's the national language of a people. Has there ever been a people that have been removed from their land for thousands of years, and now they're back in their land? Has there ever been a nation that has been taken such ridicule and punishment and persecution, and yet they are strong? Has there ever been a nation like this? Has there ever been a God who's taking care of his people like this? So B, why is this all done? Why is all this done? Yeah, this was done so Israel would know that the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Deuteronomy 4:35. Unto thee it was showed that thou mightest know the Lord, he is God. There is none else beside him. Out of heaven he made thee to hear his voice, that he might instruct thee, and upon earth he showed thee his great fire, and thou heardest his words out of the midst of the fire. Unto thee it was showed that thou mightest know the Lord, he is God. This is why he showed you all these things. This is why he showed you at the base of Mount Sinai. You were standing there and you saw the fire in heaven. This is why you went to the Red Sea. This is why he did all these wonderful things. This is why we see this happening. So we know the Lord, he is God, and there's none else beside him. Isaiah 66, verse 8. Who hath heard such a thing? Who has seen such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Can the world be created in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? 1948, a nation was born at once, right? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. Shall I bring to birth and not cause to bring forth, saith the Lord? Shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, saith the Lord God? What happened as soon as they declared the state of Israel a nation? All the Arab nations went to attack, right? What is Isaiah saying here that God's saying? Shall I bring it to birth? Will I allow a nation to be born and not cause it to prosper? Will I bring a nation to birth and just allow it to die as soon as it's born? That's not God. And you can see everything that happened. The War of Independence in 1948, 1949, the Six-Day War, 1967. You can see God was there. He brought it forth. Shall I bring the birth and not cause it to bring forth? And the Lord, shall I cause to bring forth and shut the womb, saith thy God? Rejoice ye with Jerusalem, be glad with her, all All ye that love her rejoice for joy with her, all ye that mourn for her, that ye may suck and be satisfied with the breasts of her consolation, that ye may milk out and be delighted in the abundance of her glory. For thus saith the Lord, behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the glory of the Gentiles like a flowing stream. Then shall ye suck, and shall be borne upon her sides, and dandle upon her knees. As one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you, and ye shall be comforted in Jerusalem. Those reading this prophecy, you're talking we're going to be comforted in Jerusalem? Jerusalem's not even in the Jewish hands. We're scattered around the world, and Isaiah is talking about being comforted in Jerusalem. It's happening. Verse 14, and when ye see this, your heart shall rejoice, and your bones shall flourish like an herb, and the hand of the Lord shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. Is that coming to fruition? The Lord's hand is known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. What's happened when enemies have attacked Israel? They've been utterly destroyed. Utterly destroyed. And there's no logical reason why Israel could have survived in any of the wars. God was there. God wanted to make sure that only he could get the praise. And even a secular video, I mean, you clearly see God was through the whole thing, whether they wanted to admit it or not. I heard that, in our war colleges here in the United States, we don't use the Israeli battles as examples to teach our soldiers because it's impossible. It can't happen. You can't teach it because Israel shouldn't have won. They were outnumbered, one to many in all aspects. There's no way to teach it. And here we have God blessing it. Your bones shall flourish like a herb, and the hand of the Lord shall be known toward his servants, and his indignation toward his enemies. See, why is this? Why did he do all this? To show his love for their forefathers. Show his love toward their forefathers. Verse 37, and because he loved thy fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and brought thee out in the sight of his mighty power out of Egypt, to drive out nations from before thee, greater and mighty than thou art, to bring thee in, to give their land for inheritance as it is this day. God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I'm going to make of you a great nation. Well, if the nation is destroyed, God hasn't fulfilled his promise and his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has he? God has fulfilled his covenant. God has kept his covenant. God has shown his love for the forefathers. D, obeying the law will prolong your life. Deuteronomy 34:39. Know ye therefore this day, and consider in thine heart that the Lord, he is God in heaven above and upon the earth beneath. There is none else. Thou shalt keep therefore his statutes and his commandments, which I command you this day, that it may be well with thee and thy children after thee, that thou mayest prolong thy days upon the earth, which the Lord thy God giveth thee forever. And we're going to get to, we may get there. But one of the 10 commandments is honor thy father and mother so that thy days may be prolonged on the earth, right? We always promote this as the only commandment with promise. And we always use that particular commandment to show that if you obey mom and dad, you're going to live a long life. Well, and then we get to the questions of, well, that person respected their mother and dad, but they died at an early age. And then we say that, well, he lived a good life. God allowed him to live a good life, right? I think by doing this study, I realized that may be all true. We can use that, but really it's promoting if you honor thy father and thy mother, if you obey your mother and father, you are going to stay in the land of Israel for a long time. If you don't, in other words, your life will be prolonged on the land, Israel. They did not, right? Their lives were not prolonged on the land; they were removed from the land. And so, where does teaching come from? The mother and father. If you don't listen to the mother and the father's teaching, God's going to fulfill his promise that you're going to be scattered. You're going to be scattered. So here we have, Moses is pointing out, you need to obey You need to obey. Well, it's in your best interest to obey. You're going to get to enjoy the land that God has given you for a longer period of time if you obey. If you don't obey, you're going to be scattered. Any questions so far? Comments? Verse 41, Moses reminds them of the cities of refuge. He reminds them of the 3 cities of refuge. First, on the east side of Jordan. Verse 41, then Moses severed 3 cities on this side of Jordan for the sun rising, that the slayer might flee thither, which thou shalt kill his neighbor unawares, and hated him not in times past, and that fleeing unto one of these cities he might live, namely Bezer, in the wilderness, in the plain of the country of the Reubenites, and Ramoth in the Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan and Bashan of the Manassanites. Oh, here's some pictures of Ahab back in late 1940s, early 1950s, and even today. And so here are the 6 cities of refuge. Remember, they hadn't crossed the Jordan River yet, so Moses is only referring to the 3 on the east side of Jordan. Now we move on to the second sermon. We've divided up Deuteronomy into 3 different parts, 3 different sermons. And here we have talk about the covenant obligation. Do I need to go through A, B, and C here? Bezer, B-E-Z-E-R. Ramoth, R-A-M-O-T-H. Or B. And C, Golan, G-O-L-A-N. Golan. Verse 24, and this law which Moses set before the children of Israel, these are the testimonies of statutes and judgments which Moses spake unto the children of Israel after they came forth out of Egypt, on this side Jordan, in the valley against Beth-peor, in the land of Shinar, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, whom Moses and the children of Israel smote after they were come forth out of Egypt, and they possessed his land and the land of Og and Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, which were on this side Jordan toward the sun rising, from Or, which is by the bank of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Zion, which is Hermon, and all the plain of this side Jordan eastward, even unto the sea of the plain under the springs of Pisgah. So we're going to have here, this is the largest part of Deuteronomy. Moses is literally going to go back through all the 10 Commandments and go back through all the laws. So we're going to be here for quite some time, mostly next semester, reviewing the commandments that many of which we've already discussed. But first of all, he starts off with an introduction, where he is, some location information. So we find, again, he's speaking here from the plains of Moab. Now, why does this transition nicely to what we just discussed? As he's now going to review over the 10 Commandments, he's going to review over the laws, the 613 laws. Why does this go right from the previous discussion? I'm not talking about the cities of refuge, but knowing that he is God. Moses spent made quite an emphasis knowing, have you seen any other God like this? Have you seen anything like this? You've seen him with the fire, you've seen him with the Red Sea, you've seen all these magnificent things. So if I've seen all this and I recognize that God is alone, how does that help Moses with talking about the next several chapters?
He's talking to the next generation.
Right.
And they had heard a reference and they knew all of it. Here he's reiterating it.
Right.
And we've learned that even today that the key of really learning is repetition.
Right.
And that's how we really learn. We repeat and repeat until we finally get it. We say, oh, now I get it. Here he's repeating. Deutero means a second time around.
Right.
Deuteronomio, second time given the law.
Right.
He gives the law a second time.
And Moses is emphasizing, God gave you this, your God gave you this, and he is an awesome, most powerful God, and I'm trying to stress you that he is God alone, and this is what you need to know in order to survive, in order to live a prosperous, healthy life. You need to know these laws. We're going to go through it. We're going to go through it now. So here we have B. So we're on the next handout, number 5, handout 5. The review of the Ten Commandments. Deuteronomy 5, verse 1. Moses called all Israel and said unto them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and judgments which I speak in your ears this day, that ye may learn them and keep and do them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. The Lord made not his covenant with our fathers, but with us, even us, who are all of us here alive this day. The Lord talked with you face to face in the mount of the midst of the fire. I stood between the Lord and you at that time to show you the word of the Lord, for you were afraid by reason of the fire, and went not up into the mount, saying, I am the Lord thy God, who has brought thee out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage. Moses here is pointing out, Hear, O Israel, I want you to listen. This is very important. We're going to go over the commandments that God gave me. Remember, you were afraid at the time. I went up and was your mediator. I went up and brought the Ten Commandments down that God wrote, and we are going to go through this because He's the Lord God. This is what He's saying is absolutely necessary for the survival of the nation. He's saying something very important. Hear, O Israel, listen up. Listen up. And so we're very familiar with the Ten Commandments. So the first commandment, thou shalt have no other God before me, no other gods before me. So that's what Deuteronomy 5:7 says, and Exodus 20, verse 3 says. Since God redeemed the people, He has every right to acknowledge His right of sovereignty over them. I freed you from Egypt. I have the right to tell you you need to worship me. I have the right to tell you I am sovereign over you. I have redeemed you. How about us? Has He redeemed us? Does He have the right to have sovereignty over us? Yes. He redeemed us. He redeemed us. He has the right to acknowledge His right of sovereignty over us. We are to submit to every area of our life. Thou shalt have no other God before me. We are not to submit to any other area of life. We are to submit every area of our life to God. But you know what? We like to hold things back. No. And how do we violate the first command when we do that? Who are we actually worshiping when we decide not to obey? Right? We are ourselves God. We are worshiping ourselves. We are serving ourselves instead of the one true God, right? So therefore we have put ourselves to the God, and therefore we have violated the first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And how many times a day do we do this? Many times, right? Thou shalt have no other God before me, and that includes putting myself above God, and putting myself above God's commands, and my disobedience causes me to violate the first command. We're to submit to every area of God of our life. If we are holding something back, we are putting ourselves as God over the one true God. Kind of puts this particular command in perspective, doesn't it? We say, I never worship any other God. And there's Buddha, and there's all the Hindu gods. I don't worship them over the sun. But sometimes I don't want to do what God tells me to do. Well, there you go. You just violate the first command. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Number 2, thou shalt not make any graven image. Deuteronomy 5:8, thou shalt not make any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth. Thou shalt not bow thyself unto them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Again, you can read that in Exodus chapter 20, verses 4 through 6. God doesn't want us to make any image of Him lest we worship it. Lest we worship. God does not share His throne with anyone, such as not me or you, right? Or anything. Anything. If we talked about last week we talked about how God did not allow anybody to see His form, lest we create an image of Him, lest we start worshiping that image. God doesn't want us to do that. Notice how critical it is to set an example for our children, our grandchildren. If you're not worshiping God, your kids and grandkids won't be either. We have here in the latter part of the verse here, verse 9, thou shalt not bow thyself unto them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, that the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. If you're not worshiping God, if your kids don't see you worship God, your kids aren't going to be worshiping God, which means their kids aren't going to be worshiping God. And how quickly we talked about how one generation removed is totally different. So we need to be careful. We need to set that example. Number 3, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Deuteronomy 5:11, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Vain means to make his name empty, meaningless.
Common.
Yeah, and worthless. You're going to stomp upon and tread upon and smother.
Oh my God. Disrespect.
Disrespect. Whereas the name Jehovah is just in awe. Every name of God we are in awe of. The name is so precious that the Jewish writers would not even write all the letters, would not even touch the Bible except with a finger pointing tool. And they would throw away their pen every time they wrote his name. That one time, throw away the pen. We shouldn't be misusing God's name. God's name is precious. It's a treat for us. It's precious. And so make sure we're not using his name in vain and using it just and put it on a pedestal and just uplift and hold. His name is awesome. Number 4, keep the Sabbath day. Deuteronomy 5:12, keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it as the Lord thy God hath commanded thee. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thine ox, nor thy donkey, nor any other of thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates, that thy manservant and thy maidservant may rest as well as thou. And remember that thou wast a servant in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord thy God brought thee out of thence through a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord thy God commanded thee to keep the Sabbath. Deuteronomy, this particular portion of the law for the Sabbath is slightly different than the one found in Exodus. In Exodus, we have here for verse 11, 20 verse 11, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them is, and rested on the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. What 2 things are different between the 2?
He sanctified it. He didn't say that.
What was the reason for one versus the other? The reason in Exodus was as a reminder of God as the creator of the universe. In Deuteronomy, we find here it's a reminder of God redeeming the people and taking them out of Egypt. In other words, God creating a nation. Exodus is God's reminder that God has created the universe. Deuteronomy is a reminder that God created a nation. And the Sabbath day, you remember that. The Sabbath day was a gift of God to Israel. In Deuteronomy, the Sabbath was a reminder of God making Israel a nation. In Exodus is a reminder that God created the universe. It's the only one of the 10 commandments not repeated in the New Testament. The only one not repeated in the New Testament. Matthew 19:16 through 22. If you remember that particular story, is where the rich man wanted to go to heaven, and God said, well, you need to keep all these commandments. And so he goes and lists all these commandments, and the Sabbath day is not listed among them. Our time is up, and there's a lot to cover in this particular commandment, so we'll review it next week. Otherwise, I'll just rush through it. We have my brother-in-law, pastor in Lake City. He did a series of sermons where each Sunday was totally on one commandment and another commandment. My Jonathan, my second oldest, he came home one day recently with a joke. Who was the only person in the Bible who had broken all the commandments at one time? Moses. Moses broke them. He's the only person who's ever broken all the commandments at one time. It really is. Any questions or comments? We'll continue on with the Ten Commandments next week. Yes. Yes. We still don't do it. Right. Right. We have to choose each day to serve the Lord. Right. Any other questions or comments? Let's close in prayer. Dear Father, Lord, thank you for today, Lord. Thank you for your blessings, Lord. We thank you that you are our God, Lord. And Lord, we're your people. And Lord, we just thank you, Lord. Thank you for the example of your chosen people, Israel, Lord. Lord, how we see how mighty hand you have on them, Lord. And Lord, just be protect them and guide them. We pray for peace in Israel. Pray for peace in Jerusalem, Lord. Lord, just may you guide us, allow us to share your gifts with others, Lord, that they may come to know you as well, Lord. May you just bless Pastor Alpha and the Holy Spirit in the hour to come. In Jesus' name.